Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to do something a little different. Not going to touch on Linux or servers or storage volumes or anything like that. What we're going to do is I'm going to start on a playlist here about some game development and game development software. And I'm going to start with an easy level and I'm going to work our way up. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on the game engine. I'm going to touch on the middleware that sits on top of the game engine. I'm also going to touch on all aspects like design, assets, 3D editors and animators, things like that. And we're going to start off easy with just this video is going to be an intro into what we're going to cover. And then we're going to work our way up progressively up the chain. And then we will figure out as we go along, we'll follow a basic layout that we've done. And we're going to work our way through. So what I plan to do is start by building like a first-person shooter, and then roll into maybe puzzle games, and then roll into like RPGs. It all depends on the developer of the middleware. The engine we're going to use is Wicked Engine. It's more than capable of all of these things, but the middleware is going to be the limiting factor because it's still in development. So when we come back, we're going to take a look at some of these aspects, and I'll see you then. Alright, so we're back. So what I want to touch on first is the tools that we're going to be using. So we're going to start with the most basic. Krita, which is a graphics art program. It is a free and open source kind of a combo of Photoshop and, let's say, Inkscape. It's not really either of those products, but it is a very good graphics program. Let me just open up this JPEG here. You can create whatever you want, but I'm just going to go open this one up. And there, basic art, all the tools. We can use this to make textures. So texture files or texture editing a UV map that we export. We won't be using this right away, but we will be using it to create our own splash screens, and we'll be using it to create some of our own graphics and textures later on. So just be aware that Krita is a very powerful tool. Not a lot of people use it for this purpose, but it is an exceptionally good tool for that. The next tool that we're going to be using is Acid Music, and it's a really old tool that I got to work on this computer. It is basically a looping program that you can make your audio loops and sounds. You can make background loops, you can clip sounds, you can bring them in. Audacity is another one that is used, but this one I can actually use to lay down our soundtracks. It is not the highest fidelity programs. Like I say, it is an older one, but I paid for it many years ago. It worked quite well, and it fills the niche for now. If someone was making a AAA product, obviously you'd be using another product such as Pro Tools or something to do the audio there. So, however, this works for us. You can even record for doing sound bites in making sound effects and things like that. So you can come up to the speaker, bang on the drums, scrape a watermelon, break some celery, whatever you need sound effects for that aren't in the engine that you need to capture, you can use Acid for. Next product we're going to be using quite a bit of is Blender. Give it a minute to open here, and Blender is basically a 3D animation tool, and I'll close this. Basically, you can take objects, move them around, scale them, build whatever you want, and then you can export them into what we call an FBX format. And from there, what we do is we then import them into our game engine. We'll come back to that at a later date. Don't save, it's not going to save. So I can't show you the Wicked engine per se, but what I can do is bring up a web page. And then that's going to bring up the Wicked engine in this web page. And if you want to check this out on your own, feel free to go to the site and check it out. However, it's a very capable engine. You can see here from this image, take the mouse off so you can see it better. It can do some really good geometry and rendering pipeline, etc., etc. It fully supports the DirectX and the Vulkan. I believe this X2 is the graphics engine API abstraction layer. That might be used in Macintosh. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at that at all. I don't know. I don't think it really applies to me. However, Vulkan is used for Linux interpretation, and DirectX is used for Windows. So it's widely supported engine, which is great. I do not believe that the middleware that we're using on top supports the support some of the features yet. I don't think it's been turned on for those yet. However, the engine itself is extremely capable, and feel free to come here, check it out, do some investigation yourself. But that is what lies underneath the hood of the product we're going to be using here, which is GameGuru. So GameGuru is what I call middleware, and what it does is it sits on top.
Hey, you.
It sits on top of the Wicked engine, and it is basically a user interface for doing what you need to do with the engine without being a computer programmer or a high-level designer. So it allows for things such as game design, level layout, terrain, storyboarding, etc. So I've come over here to this tutorial screen, and it's got introduction, it's got getting started, it's got the storyboard, but it's basically telling you the components that the GameGuru has. And so you've got this storyboard, which is very common. Unreal Engine, I believe, was the first to bring it out. I believe Godot Engine has it now, and Unity has it as well if you want to turn it on. I don't think it's on by default in Unity, but I'm running a slightly older version of Unity to be compatible with some of my older models and tools that I have. I have an older version of the Gaia engine, which is a terrain generator, which is, I would say, better than this one. These tools are in the early stages. They're only going to improve. The Wicked engine is just as capable of doing as complex of terrains as the Unreal. Well, maybe nothing's on the Unreal engine layer. Like with Unreal 5, it's just gotten amazing. There's nothing really that it can't do now. It's so powerful. However, the earlier versions of Unity, and not even early, but relatively, like maybe one or two back, the Wicked engine is very similar as to what it can do, the Godot engine, etc. There's a lot of technical specs, and I'm sure someone's going to say, no, it can't do this, it can't do that, it can't do whatever. But it's very capable. If you go and look at the demo of it, or if you go look at Games from Scratch page, he does a good review on the engine itself, a pretty in-depth video. You can see it's quite powerful and capable, and very, very capable of doing what we're going to need to do getting started in game development. So what the GameGuru people have done is they built this middleware that sits on top of that Wicked engine. And so you can set up your terrain, you create a new area, you lay it out in the storyboard, you get your entry screens and things, then you lay out a terrain. Once you've got that terrain down, and you can do that two different ways. You can actually build it, pre-generate it. They've got biomes in here, which I believe they've taken that idea from Gaia. However, there's a lot of different people that have used the same concepts and worked them out. So whether they've used Gaia or seen it or heard about it or not even, the concepts are going to flow over because it's what's necessary for a good terrain generator. So what a terrain generator does is basically builds a mesh, a big two-dimensional layout, which then you use to work upon to construct your environment that you're going to work with. And it has two ways of doing that. You can choose from biomes and then edit them, or you can import a height map. And what a height map is basically it's a black and white image where one color is low, one color is high, and depending on where you've got the gradients, it changes the map to mesh. then from that height map as a base model, like say they've actually done a demo game where they use part of the Grand Canyon, but say here I have a mountain behind me, I could easily use that height map tool, capture from Google Maps or somewhere that mountain, get it. There's tools out there that you can export a height map or convert to a height map. I think Google Earth might even have it built in. Don't quote me on that though. But anyway, then you can take that height map, import it into GameGuru Max, and it will lay out that texture and mesh for you. So from there, then you can paint your terrain, add trees, foliage, shape, fine tune, raise land, lower land, tweak it, paint textures down on the mesh itself, and from there you flush out your terrain and you now have your working space. So from there you would then go into the level editor, and in the level editor you have areas like in this picture here. They have a house, they have some bushes and things that aren't part of the procedurally generated terrain. That's the other thing, the terrain is procedurally generated, so it makes for it can make for some very large areas with very low resources. As long as you've got a decent math processor, it's going to handle it. Depending on your graphics card, you can actually put your level of detail, and you have a slider. Everything is like sliders and widgets. So you have a slider that will allow you to change that forward or backward, and it will allow you to turn fog on and off. You can have all these things. They all work when you render out. A few things can be tweaked, but you can turn them on or off in the editor as you're working. One for visibility, like if you're zooming out to look at everything from a grander view, you don't want all that distance fog filling in and obstructing your view. So you're gonna turn that off as you're working on that. Pardon me, I haven't itched my eyebrow. But then, so in the level editor, you can do all that stuff. But inside of the level editor, once you've flushed out your details and stuff, now you start building your game. You can't really see it here. You can see it kind of up here. But there is this little bullseye in the editor, and we'll get into this more later. But that toggles on and off all the tools and utilities that'll show up in these for building a first-person shooter. The next one over is a puzzle, so it'll turn on all the utilities for puzzles. They haven't implemented that yet. This is early access, and they haven't gotten as far in as they would have liked to by now, but I think they've been refining and making sure they have a stable product. That being said, I had installation issues myself. Currently, I can't actually run from the demo games over here. If I try to run any of these, right away it crashes for me still, even though I've updated my game driver. I bought a new graphics card, not a top-end graphic card, but bought a graphic card. The other thing about these demos, I should say before I go back to the other screen, is that you can go in and edit and see how they've done them. That's what they've included them for. So you can play them, you can see how the content plays out, and then you can go in, edit them, and learn from these examples. These are only like one-level examples. There might be one or two-level examples in there just to show how that progresses. But they've given you this content to start with so that you can kind of reverse engineer what they've done, see how it works. So you go back and forth between playing and editing and see how they've done things and how they've implemented them, which is a really useful tool. So we go back here, and we've talked about the train, and we've talked about the level editor. Then in the level editor, you can open the object editor. Now this is where you get things like your models, pre-built characters that they've applied you with, items, place downs. So like this tree and the house, those are both objects in the object editor. So you can browse through there. They've given you a ton of assets. They've even given you some assets with their demo models with this that have come in. And so you can go down into the structure hierarchy of the models and assets, and you can go back and you can use the stuff they've already created, and all free of charge. It comes with the bundle price. You can also import your own. It doesn't show it here, but right here, this button is import your own, and you can bring in your own that you've created using GIMP for your texturing, or 3D Max for your FBX model exports. So you can bring in your own items quite easily. Then there's also a character generator, and what this is they've given you quite a bit of templates, and the templates are basically pre-configured bodies, body parts that you can customize. You can go, you know, head, body, torso, face. You know, they've given you a male and a female, and with that, what they've done is allowed you to pretty much quick fab characters together to be either non-player characters, to be aggressive models, with so forth and so forth. They've also included a few mammals, birds, etc. to give some life into your environments. However, currently I haven't played around with this, but I don't believe you can set those up as characters, so you can't really set them up as aggressive. Like you can't have a pack of rabbits come and attack you and swarm you like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail and the Vorpal Rabbit. You can't do anything like that yet, but I'm sure it's coming. And like I say, this is early access and they're still working on it. And we've covered the terrain editing already. Object grouping, now that's basically you've laid down a bunch of objects in your scene and you want to use them over and over and possibly even in different levels. Well, you could save them as a group, and then it makes it easy to just drag that group on and set it up, so you don't have to place every item again, and it makes for building a bunch of prefabs, more or less, and then you can put those prefabs into your level areas, and it saves on the level design time. If you were to place every single item one at a time, and you had like common themes like a bazaar market or interior of a certain house that reoccurs level after level as you do different things, and then you load up to basically that level again, but there's some things different in it because now it's actually a different level of gameplay, but it's in the same environment. Groupings makes it really easy to take objects and reuse them over and over with very efficient time and use of time. So anyway, so that's good. There's other things not covered in here that you can't see, but we'll go into them in some other lessons. So this is just a big overview. But they have things like flags and zones, and you lay those down. And so one that I'm going to implement is going to be a teleport zone. And basically what's going to happen is in order to get to the other side of whatever, you're going to go through an archway, you're going to trigger a zone. That zone is then going to teleport you over to either another zone or a flag on a similar archway. So it's going to be kind of like a Stargate-y thing, right? So when I get into the role-playing game aspect of it, that's going to be a mechanism that I use to go from area to area to area, and you'll have to unlock where you can go, and I'll be able to set up multiple behaviors, hopefully at that point in time. Right now it's fairly limited. I believe you can set up 10 behaviors to an object, but I haven't played around with it more than just a single instance. I've basically come in here and played around just enough so that I can do these tutorials, work up a demo level, and make sure that you have the basics that you need if you want to get in and get started with a fairly powerful tool once you actually start using it. It's definitely a very efficient and fast tool, so I will give it that. And it's a work in progress. It's only going to get better as I keep implementing and fleshing things out. It's going to become a very, very powerful tool, especially once they get that puzzle aspect in. When they get that puzzle aspect in, I suspect they're going to be doing mini games, and I suspect they're also going to have more of the logic. They have a lot of logic built in here, really easy to use. You don't have to code. By the way, if you want to turn on development options and code, you can, and it uses the Lua scripting language. So just be aware that's what they use, which I'm not really that up to speed on. I've done most of my stuff in PHP and Visual Basic and a little bit of C+ over the years. I haven't used a whole lot of other codes over the day, a little bit of JavaScript and stuff. But most languages are pretty similar. Most scripting languages are very similar. I used a lot of the ActionScript back in the day with Flash game programming and things like that. And every little engine has kind of had its own stuff. I did use Dark Basic back in the day, which was what this GameGuru earlier versions were based on. They used Dark Basic as their engine for most of their products, and now they've actually switched to a third-party engine, which I think is really a good move, because Dark Basic was a really dated engine at this point in time, and they needed to move to something that is forward powerful. And I believe choosing the Wicked engine has been a really good choice for them. We'll see as things move forward. So we talked basically about all the basics that we need here. And what I'm going to do is, this is just going to be a short one. I'm going to finish this video off, and we're just going to do the next one. We're going to jump right into the game editor, and we're going to set up a terrain, lay down a couple of objects and maybe some behaviors, and just get a really basic overview of working in GameGuru itself. Then following that, we're probably going to jump into a video on taking some Blender models. I'll probably pre-build the models, have them open in Blender, export them as FBX files, and then bring it in, and I'll set up that teleport system that I was talking about. So we'll probably do something simple like that. Yeah, so that's about it. I'm going to end this one here. Keep it nice and short just as an overall introduction, and then we will get into it in the next one. Thank you for tuning in.